Hello, welcome to GMAT Tuesdays. My name is Kevin. This is a guitar, which has nothing to do with GMAT Tuesdays right now. Maybe in the future. I'm trying to be careful putting it down. Okay. All right, welcome. We are answering a student question again. Student wrote in, and I'm making this video to respond because I think it's going to help a lot of you out there, and it is kind of a tricky concept. Very important for sentence correction. So, the question was, can an it at the beginning of a sentence be correct? And so, you probably are really good about thinking about pronoun antecedent agreement. If you aren't, you should go look at some of our videos. And if you think, well, if there's an it at the beginning of the sentence, where could its antecedent be? So you might just eliminate it right out of the gate. And most of the time you might be right. I'm borrowing a phrase here from wonderful Mike McGarry because he is wonderful and very intelligent and smart. There's lots of names for that it at the beginning of the sentence, but he calls it the empty it, which it really is. There's nothing that it's really referring to. It's just a placeholder for the subject portion of the sentence. And oftentimes when you do this with a sentence, you end up with an indirect and wordy construction, which are things we want to avoid on GMAT sentence correction. We want to eliminate those sentences. But, as with most things in the English language, there are exceptions. We have exceptions, and that's where they'll really try to get you on the GMAT, is with these two exceptions. So, most of the time you'd be right to just eliminate, but check to make sure that these two scenarios are not taking place. One exception is an emphatic construction. An emphatic construction is meant to emphasize something unexpected. And so you would use this construction when the general population thinks one thing, but something else is actually true. So you're actually emphasizing the trueness of this thing that most people don't think about. And there's sort of two constructions of this. There's it is X that does A, or it is A that X does. And those are the two versions. And so here's an example. It was Steve Wozniak that did the significant technological work at Apple, not Steve Jobs. So, general population probably thinks that Steve Jobs, very intelligent person, did most of the technological work at Apple when it first started out, but that's not true. Steve Wozniak was the one who actually was an engineer and had a job at a computer company and knew what he was doing. Steve Jobs was a college dropout. So, one exception. Second exception, which is this fancy word, extraposition. Extraposition. You don't really need to know the word. Forget it from this moment on. Just know that sometimes you have a sentence that has a very long infinitive or a that clause, and it's better to have it at the end of the sentence instead of the beginning of the sentence. So if you have the subject, and the subject is a very long infinitive or a very long that clause, a lot of problems can happen with your sentence, and it can end up sounding kind of awkward and hard to understand. So what we do is we use extraposition to just move that to the end of the sentence and use our empty it at the beginning of the sentence to hold the place. And actually, I found an example of this in the official guide, question number 58. Here is the correct answer. It can hardly be said that, okay, so here's the beginning of our that clause, that educators are at fault for not anticipating the impact of microcomputer technology. Wow, there's a lot of computer theme here. Didn't even notice that. So imagine if we were to take this sentence, the actual subject is this that clause beginning here. If we put that at the beginning of the sentence, it'd be kind of hard to say. It would say that educators are at fault for not anticipating the impact of microcomputer technology can hardly be said, which is really awkward and strange. So this is an idiomatic construction that you want to look for. These are the two exceptions to the empty it. Otherwise, you can safely eliminate them from the answer choices. All right, that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. We answer any quandary, query, or conundrum that you might have. Be excellent to the universe, and I'll see you next Tuesday.